Parshas Noach, Tavshin Zayin. So here we go. Once again, we're discussing the Mabul and all these Parshios, starting with Noach and going on to Avram Avinu and to Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov, the Shvatim. A lot of very, very interesting and heartwarming lessons that the Nesivos Shalom learns in all these Parshios. And Parshas Noach, as I've actually said over the past few years, it's interesting how when we speak about Noach and we think about Noach, many of us have the same exact image of what happened in the Teva, what happened at the Mabul, as we had when we were in first grade. The way we learned it then, and the way we think of it, with the animals walking up the gangplank to the ship, and the garbage being thrown in the bottom, overboard, this, that, everything, whatever you learned in first grade, that's pretty much the picture that you have in your mind of the Mabul. But as we progress in life, we realize that there was really, really a lot more, and the entire episode of Noach is one that has so many different lessons and so many different ways of looking at what happened and so many questions that need to be asked. But we start at the beginning of the Parsha, Eile Toldos Noach, and we speak about Noach. What kind of a person was Noach? And the Torah tells us, Noach ish tzadik tomim hoya b'dorosav. Noach was a tzadik tomim in his generation, b'dorosav, as well as Kim, his halech Noach. That's the way the Pasuk tells us who was this man Noach? What was he all about? And Rashi brings, as we know, famous Rashi brings in the name of Chazal, the Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Ches Amud Aleph, Chazal tell us, Yesh me Rabboseinu Dorshim Oisoi L'Shvach. There are those of our rabbis that darshan this pasuk for Shvach. And we say what? That if Noach had lived in a better door, he would have been an even bigger tzaddik. When we say tzaddik, tomim, hoya b'dorosav, there are those of our rabbeim, there are those of rabboisav that say, had Noach lived in a better generation, l'shvach, he would have been even greater. And the Maimer Chazal continues, but v'yei shedarshim oisoi l'gnai. There are those that say this a bit in the negative, that had Noach lived in the door of Avraham Avinu, he really would not have been considered such a tzaddik. Those that look at it this way, and there are those that look at it the other way. And of course, the Nesivos Shalom asks over here, Nesivos Shalom asks a question. If we could say, if we say a drasha l'shvach, we say that we could say a drasha l'shvach, why would we even want to bring up the Gnai? You ever wonder about that? Yesha darshan this way and Yesha darshan that way. But if we have a good way of looking at Noach, if we have a good way of translating this pasuk, why would we say it in the negative? Why would we even bring up the Gnai over here? Also, asked in the Nesivos Shalom, doesn't the Torah tell us explicitly that Noach was a tzaddik tamim? Noach was a complete tzaddik. So again, why would we want to interpret complete tzaddik, a tzaddik tamim, in a way of genai? Why should we want to say anything negative about someone that the Torah just told us that he was a tzaddik tamim? So too, what is this b'doyroisa? The Torah tells us that he was a tzaddik tamim, he was aware in doyroisa. What do we need that word for, asked the Nesivos Shalom? The Torah is really just teaching us a lesson that Noach was a tzaddik during that time that he lived, and that is why Noach was saved from the Mabul. Yes, the entire universe, the entire world was wiped out, and Noach was saved. So the Torah is telling us why Noach was different than anybody else. What is the difference if he was a tzaddik in this door, he was a tzaddik, he would have been a tzaddik in another door? The point that we're trying to make over here now is that Noach was different. There was a reason Noach was saved from the Mabul. Rashi also tells us Rashi tells us, it's interesting to note, once we're talking about this, Rashi tells us a little further on that another way that Noach was different than Avram Avinu was that Noach needed a little bit help for his avodas Hashem. The Torah tells us, as well, Ekim is halach Noach. It sort of denotes to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sort of prodded Noach along. But Avram Avinu was different, because Avram Avinu, Asher Tzalachti Lefanai, Avram Avinu did it on his own. Avram Avinu knew how to do it on his own. Again, ask the Nesivos Shalom, why are we comparing now Noach to Avram Avinu? Again, the point over here is just to say that Noach was the best person of that generation. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to save Noach because he was better, because he was different. Why again do we say, yeah, he was different, but he was also very different than Avram Avinu? Why the comparisons? Why all of this comparing? Why does it make a difference? The Nesivos Shalom explains this entire thing with the Yesod, a very important thing we need to know about the creation of the world in general, and a Yesod about the early generations after Brias HaOlam. And he says like this: we know that there are two Yesodos of Avodas Hashem. The world was created essentially with two ways of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we've spoken about this many times in the past. That is Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. And it's alluded to in the first word of the Torah, says in the Nesivos Shalom, Bereishis, Beis Reishis. At the beginning of the world, Hashem set up the world Beis Reishis. With these two, Beis is two, right? Reishis, two at the beginning. Hashem set up the world with these two ways of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, the Zohar tells us that there's a certain order that you have to carry this out. The Zohar tells us, V'kuda kadma do yiras Hashem. And translated, that would mean Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem in a way. But yes, there's Avas Hashem, and yes, there's Yiras Hashem. But first, a person needs to have Yiras Hashem. And Kuda Tinyana do Avas Hashem. So the first thing every person has to have is Yiras Hashem. And the Nesivos Shalom compares it to a building. When you build a structure, you build a building, the first thing you need to know is that you have a solid foundation. There are many important parts of the building. There are many different integral parts, things that you have to do for the building. But if the foundation is no good, everything else is going to come down. Yiras Hashem is the foundation. Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. Pekuda Kadma Do Yiras Hashem. That is the foundation. That is how you start. The Torah tells us that Yetzer Lev Ha'adam Ramin Urav. We learned that in the Parsha, that a person is born with inclinations that are, quote, that are lean to the bad side. And until you work on that with your Yiras Hashem, you cannot move on to other things such as Avas Hashem and Vekas Hashem. And that is the way the world needed to be built. First thing first. Everything else is wonderful. First thing first, Yiras Hashem. That is the order of the world and the way that things had to be carried out. And not only that the world had to be built that way, but every person has to know that his life needs to be built up that way too. The job of the generations, of the Doros, before Avram Avinu, they were the foundation of the world. They were the beginning of the world. They were what everything and all future generations were going to stand on. The job of those generations, including the Dor of Noach, was the job, like we said, of Pekuda Kadma Do Yiras Hashem. The first thing, they had to work on Yiras Hashem. The Midah of Ava and the Midah of Ava, which belonged to Avram Avinu, that came afterward. But the job of Noach at this point was Yiras Hashem. So the Torah tells us, says in the Nesivos Shalom, that Noach was an Ish Sadik Tomim Hoya when B'doyroiso, because he knew what his tafkid was, and he was doing exactly what was required for his door. We want to know, why do we have to mention in his door? Why do we have to mention? We know what's the difference. We're only telling you why Noach was different than everyone. No, Noach Tzadik Tomim Hoya B'doyroiso, because he understood his tafkid in life. He fulfilled the tafkid of his generation. He was Oved Hashem with Yira, which is the thing that was actually required of those first generations. So the Torah tells us that because he reached the tachlis of the time. As to Elokim, his halach noach, Elokim is a lashon of Gevura and Yira. As to Elokim, his halach noach. He knew what he had to do in the midah of Yira. And had Noach served HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Avas Hashem, then he would not be fulfilling his tafkid. So when we say that there was a shavach and a ganai, we can explain it this way, says the Nesivos Shalom. We don't have to explain it that Noach wouldn't have been a tzaddik at all. He wouldn't be anything if he lived in a generation. You know how we can explain it? Had Noach lived in a generation of Avraham Avinu and served Hashem with his midah of Yira, then he wouldn't have been as big a tzaddik as he was in his generation, because he would have been doing the wrong thing. When it came around to the time of Avraham Avinu, it was a time of Ava. Avraham Avinu, his midah of Ava is what was required at that time. The tachlis of Avraham Avinu's generation was Ava. Had Noach been there, that would have been the quote Genai. He wouldn't have been as big a tzaddik because he wouldn't have understood his tafkid in life. He wouldn't have understood that what he was really supposed to be doing. And it was a time, as we know, the Nesivos Shalom says, you see that the generation of Avraham Avinu, he says, you know, sometimes you talk about how to be makar of people, how to be friendly with people. And when we approach people with ahava, says the Nesivos Shalom, no matter what they are, and no matter who they are, if you treat them with love, if you treat them with ahava, you see in the generation of Avraham Avinu, what he did was widespread. It spread like wildfire. Whatever Avraham Avinu, it was contagious, it was infectious. Everybody caught on to Avraham Avinu because he was instilling in the world this midah of ahava. By Noach, we find that Noach, his own family he took with him, but everybody else went. Everybody else went in the Dar Mabel, because the midah of Yira is a little bit more, it's not as infectious. You have to do it, but that's not the way to treat with other people. The lesson from this week's Parsha, just to sum it up, says in the Nesivos Shalom, is that every person has to know what his job is. You need to know your place in your time, where you're living, what your matzav is with your family, with your friends. You have to do what you have to do. Don't go looking what people 14 generations before, what they did, what your neighbor is doing, what other people in your family say you should do. Every person has to know. You know when you're called a tzaddik? You're called a tzaddik. You know when we talk about you l'shvach? You know when we praise a person, we know when you say a person is doing the right thing, he's a good person, it doesn't mean that he's giving millions of dollars to tzedakah right now. It doesn't mean that he's doing everything that to the whole world. He's doing the thing that's right for him or her. Every person has to know that whatever your job is in this world, that is, you fulfill that, that's what shavach is. And now we can understand why Yesh Darsh Moisei L'Shvach, and there are those Yesh Ma'abisenu Darsh Moisei L'Gnai. We're not saying anything bad about Noach, but we're just telling you that same lesson that Noach knew what he was supposed to do. Let's learn that lesson and let's try to understand that we can all follow this lesson of knowing what we are supposed to do at every given time, and then taka, we would say about each person, yes, you're doing the right thing. We could be mishabeach every person because he's doing the right thing at the right time.